Forensic psychologist Tim Watson-Munro says for him, the case is a chilling reminder of another little boy who went missing, William Tyrrell.
I think there is a chance. It's probably fairly slim, but there is a chance.
Gus is a little 4-year-old, blonde, curly hair, smiling face.
Every case has its red flags, the moments that don't quite fit, that make people lean forward and ask why. The first is the most glaring. That 3-hour gap between the moment Gus vanished and the time police were finally called. 3 hours, when the sun was already beginning its slow descent behind the horizon. 3 hours in a region where light fades fast and heat drops sharply. The kind of delay that can erase footprints, scatter scent, and wipe away critical evidence. Why the wait? Panic? Shock? Or something else entirely? If a child vanishes in the outback, every second counts. Many have quietly wondered, if it were me, would I not have called after the first hour, even while still searching? Then there's the stop-start pattern of the investigation. Police paused operations as temperatures soared, but later returned, stronger, more deliberate, with renewed resources and focus. Why this sudden resurgence? Did they uncover something previously overlooked, or were they acting on new information that hasn't been made public? And beneath these surface questions lies one deeply personal detail that casts an even longer shadow. Gus's father was reportedly building a new 2-bedroom home for the family, a place they planned to move into soon. A sign of progress, of change, of a family settling into their next chapter. Then, in an instant, everything stopped. Some have suggested this timeline matters, that perhaps the move, the location, or the timing might hold a clue to what really happened that day. But the truth is, we don't know. We only know what was done and what wasn't. A child missing, a call delayed, a search restarted, and a family's future frozen in the dust. Sometimes the loudest part of a mystery isn't what's said, it's what's not. A quiet outback afternoon. 4-year-old Gus Lamont, curious, alive with a kind of energy only a child knows, playing near a dirt mound just meters from his family station. 30 minutes later, he's gone. Searchers scour the land, shouting his name into miles of silence. Hours pass, and then 3 full hours after he vanished, police are finally called. By that time, the sun is sinking fast, and in the outback, darkness swallows everything. Before we continue, I want to hear your thoughts. What do you believe happened in that critical window? Did Gus wander off and become lost? Was it an accident? Maybe a fall into an unseen shaft? Or could there be another force at play, something no one expected? Tell me in the comments which theory makes the most sense to you, and add one piece of reasoning behind it. I'll be watching for the most convincing answers. It was Saturday, September 27, 2015, at his family's remote Oak Park station near Utah. A quiet stretch of land, miles of open scrub, silence so deep you could hear a fly hum. Gus had been outside playing, just a normal afternoon, until his grandmother called for him, and the sound of her voice was met with nothing but wind. For a child that small to disappear in open country, it didn't make sense. Family members searched the property, shouting his name, circling every shed and water tank. They combed the homestead for 3 long hours before police were called. 3 hours. That delay would become one of the most haunting questions in this case, because in that window, the sun dipped, shadows deepened, and any possible trail, any evidence, could have slipped away with the light. When officers finally arrived, the search exploded into a full-scale operation. Helicopters swept overhead, police, emergency crews, Aboriginal trackers, and even drones all spread across the dry terrain. Hundreds of people. Days of searching. And yet, not a single confirmed trace of Gus. No clothes, no footprints that led anywhere certain, no scent trail that stayed strong. Just one faint footprint, about 500 meters from the homestead, studied, photographed, but never confirmed as his. Still, police held on to hope. They formed Taskforce Horizon, determined to bring him home. And though they've publicly said there's no evidence of foul play, the silence around this case feels heavy. Too heavy for a child who simply vanished. And then, another twist. After an initial phase, the search was scaled back, only to surge again with new intensity weeks later. Why? Did something new come up, or was something missed the first time around? Theories began to swirl. Some pointed to Gus wandering off and falling into hidden terrain. Others whispered about wildlife. And then there were those who saw patterns, parallels to the William Tyrrell case, where a child vanished under strikingly similar circumstances. But here's where it gets even more personal. Gus's father had just finished building a 2-bedroom home, planning for the family to move in, a fresh start just days away from becoming reality. And then, this. Coincidence? Or something that fractured that dream before it began? The moment the alarm was raised, the quiet plains around Oak Park Station turned into the heart of one of South Australia's largest recent search operations. Helicopters swept the horizon, slicing through the pale sky. Drones scanned from above. On the ground, police, emergency services, SES crews, Aboriginal trackers, and volunteers fanned out in slow, methodical lines. They searched for any sign of movement, any mark in the dust, a footprint, a toy, a scrap of fabric. But the outback is merciless. By midday, temperatures soared past 35 degrees Celsius. The land shimmered with heat mirages. Even experienced trackers struggled to keep their bearings in the endless red dirt and thorny scrub. Every step had to be calculated. Every hour brought the risk of heat exhaustion. Searchers carried extra water, not for comfort, but for survival. And yet they pushed on. Hundreds of people across tens of square kilometers, combing creeks, sheds, dams, and fence lines. The family station sat amid rugged cattle country, open but deceptively complex. Deep gullies, abandoned mine shafts, and miles of dry grass that can swallow sound and sight alike. Despite the sheer scale of the operation, no trace of Gus was found. Not a piece of clothing, not a footprint that could be confirmed, not a single item belonging to the little boy who'd vanished in plain daylight. And that's when the question began to weigh heavier than the heat itself. If Gus was truly anywhere near that homestead, would they not have found him by now? The land gives up little, but it rarely hides something forever. Unless, of course, it wasn't the land that took him. Days into the search, hope flickered again. A set of small prints was discovered roughly 500 meters from the family homestead, tiny impressions in the dry, red soil. They seemed to match what a 4-year-old might leave behind. For a moment, searchers thought they'd found Gus's trail. Teams reoriented. Trackers followed the prints carefully, tracing them toward a shallow gully and then across rough, stony ground. But as hours passed and the terrain changed, so did the story. Experts later concluded that the additional footprints found beyond that point were not Gus's. The soil had been disturbed by livestock, possibly kangaroos, blurring what could have been the only real lead. Police widened their focus. They searched creeks, sheds, and open paddocks. They interviewed everyone who had been on or near the property that day. No signs of abduction, no confirmed evidence of foul play. Just silence. That's when Taskforce Horizon was formed, a dedicated team within South Australia Police to manage every detail of the case. a land that keeps its secrets buried deep beneath the dust. Somewhere out there, a little boy vanished, and between the moment he was last seen and the moment police were called, 3 hours passed. 3 hours of silence. 3 hours where tracks could fade, where stories could change, where truth could slip quietly out of sight. How much was lost in that span? How much was hidden? The Outback doesn't forget, it just waits. And maybe somewhere in that waiting, the answer still lingers. Does that 3-hour delay hold the key to everything? The search for Gus Lamont isn't over. It's only getting closer to the truth. Before we end, I want to hear your take. Which theory makes the most sense to you? Did Gus wander off and get lost? Did he fall victim to an environmental hazard? Or do you believe a third party was involved? Write your theory in the comments, but keep it focused. One sentence, one reason. Then tell me, do you think that 3-hour delay changed everything? Should police be searching wider? Or should they return to the homestead and start again from the ground up? And finally, drop where you're watching from, your city and time zone, because this story has crossed borders and every perspective counts. The truth may still be buried out there in the dust, but sometimes the answers begin with the questions we dare to ask.